My life is a huge puzzle, especially growing up in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. in Reston, Virginia. It's a really interesting place, especially when you're 51 years old and you lived there since 1976 until you graduated from high school. Now, since my life is a big puzzle, I'm going to show you some of the pieces. And what better place to solve puzzles than at the Supreme Court? Haha. Hi, ready? Let's go. But before we go to the Supreme Court, let me just say that all these cats from Reston who I grew up around are like these shadow government families. And for some reason, these wealthy people seem to, I don't know, it seems like they pay people to hover around people like me when you see the same strangers around you in different places. Anyways, let's get to talking about the pieces of my puzzle. These strangers around me, surrounding me. Let's talk about the piece of my puzzle. So here at the Supreme Court, across the top of the colonnade, it says equal justice under the law. Then we have society, a blue line, and below the blue line, it seems there's no justice at all. Iniquity, injustice. And that's where it seems most of the world lives. But you know, the color blue is supposed to stand for honor. So if you're within the blue line or above it, you're honorable. And unfortunately, the American flag also has red and white in it. And there's 7 red stripes that represent stripes of blood, whip stripes. The United States is founded upon whipping people into working and making people suffer to work. And those 7 stripes of blood protect the 6 white stripes. But anyway, here's my puzzle of my life growing up, and here are some of the pieces. Maybe y'all can put the puzzle together, because I just don't seem to be able to figure it out. Right here in Washington, D.C., minutes from my hometown, Reston, Virginia, where I grew up, yet no one comes to see me. Peace. So yep, here at the Supreme Court, check this out. I got some notes here I want to go over for some people who I don't know but might like to know. Ah yes, why don't I just state some names? Daniel Liam Singer, Matthew Singer, Richie Brandenburg, Rob Wickham, Ben Barocas, Karen Messick, Cindy Harvey, Scott Pfeffer, Jennifer Lolly Wickham, Andy Schwab, Matt Schwab, Jeff Vines, Chris Kalinowski, Hallie Dunn, Whitney Dunn, and Elizabeth Duncan. Check it out. Daniel Liam Singer came to see me when I was living under my tarps at 19th and Pennsylvania Avenue and said he'd be back to help me. He even brought his wife to introduce her. He never came back to help me, ever. I've known his older brother, Matthew Singer, since like 2nd grade. Matt, I think, is a diplomat in Pakistan right now. He don't help me neither. No help from friends, I guess, or people they call brothers till the end, or loved ones. Now, it's just a mess. This is a mess. But think about this. The United States is basically a customer for big companies now. Ben Barocas works for Microsoft. Okay? Rob Wickham is a software salesperson to the United States federal government. His wife, Jennifer Lolly Wickham, Lolly is her original name, Wickham is her married name. When I was in jail last year, she said she checked on me to make sure I was okay. And then when I said something the other day online about a video, she said, oh, I've always been nice to you. Well, I've always been nice to everyone else too. In fact, some of the people I mentioned on those names used to cheat off of me in school to get good grades. Okay? So, why do I say this? Karen Messick is an upper-level Google executive, also from Reston, Virginia, from my class when I was a child. Some of these folks messaged me. Some of these folks bought art from me since I've been homeless, I think. Maybe they didn't. I don't know. I heard maybe they stole some of my art that was stolen out of my tent when it was burned to Allen Park here in the United States of America in Washington, D.C., a few blocks from here on New Jersey Avenue at New Jersey No, 2 years ago. Before my tent was burned, a lot of my paintings and art was stolen. Okay? Cindy Harvey used to be my neighbor. When I left Miami, the day the pandemic shutdown started at Miami Beach, I was down there to spray paint at Wynwood Walls. I heard they shut down Miami Beach. I was like, screw this. I did my painting and left and went to Tampa that night. And I just got to Miami that day. I immediately the next day got my art from the places it was showing at and the stuff from my storage unit and drove to Pittsburgh and put it in my cousin's attic. I've been homeless since August of 2019, not been on a lease and not paid rent or anything. As I'm approaching Virginia that day, Scott Pfeffer, who I've never been friends with, starts messaging me on Facebook. Hey. Scott is a Marine, ex-Marine Corps. I don't know what he is. He's a Reston dude. He used to be a jock and play football and do a lot of things like Love Boat, which is PCP. And he used to have sex with my neighbor, Cindy Harvey. Now, Reston is the hotbed for the internet, if you didn't know that. And from what I heard, a lot of people when we were younger got wealthy because of AOL, because they got part-time temp jobs or full-time temp jobs, and instead of taking pay, they took stock options. So some people got these cheap jobs and became millionaires. AOL was the first large internet email provider for the world, as far as I know it. Reston, Virginia, the beginning of the technology area. Cable television, Reston, Virginia, Warner Cable. Okay? Cable television was first developed for the military for communications and instructional stuff and for meetings, and then adapted to use to the rest of society. Why Scott Pfeffer reached out to me and then started talking trash, couldn't tell you. Anyway, Andrew Schwab, Matthew Schwab. Andrew Schwab was part of like TMZ and all that stuff where they report on weird stuff going on with celebrities. Now he's got his own thing called The Limelight. And in fact, what I was told by Rob Wickham is that Andrew Schwab out on the West Coast, handled Mike Tyson's first video NFT of him biting the ear off of Evander Holyfield. And Andy Schwab must have got paid pretty well for that. Yeah. And they all run together. His brother Matthew Schwab is here on the East Coast. Matt Schwab is the radio man for Ocean City, Maryland. I don't really care for either of them. And the reason I don't is because they fucking watch my suffering online and make jokes about it to me in messages. And Andrew Schwab, asked me to do a pet painting of his dog, King Kong. Around the time he got his puppy years ago, when they all lived on this farm, a few of my friends, or so-called friends, and I say so-called friends because you don't let your friends starve in the streets homeless 20 minutes from home when you're multi-millionaires who travel the world constantly every year since childhood and placate me with stupid words rather than food and love and actually help and shelter and subsistence during the 2 winters I lived outside here. Oh, back to my point. I painted this painting of Andy Schwab's dog, King Kong, for the measly small price of a professional painting that you might pay more to get your certificates framed with, because framing is expensive. However, this painting, I only charged him $200. The painting took about 3 weeks altogether because I put a lot of heart and soul and expertise and professionalism into my art. He wouldn't even pay me the $50 to ship it to his house in Los Angeles. Remember, wealth, rich people, top rich people of the world, traveling the world on our $31 trillion in debt because of their wealthy contracts, their connections, and their jobs internationally since we were children in Reston, Virginia. which is where I grew up since 1976. Okay. So you've got these top technology people, Ben Barocas, Karen Messick, Rob Wickham, Jennifer Lolly Wickham. You know, as weird as it sounds, they are so connected, these alphabet agencies, shadow families. Jennifer actually spoke over the intercom at McPherson Square to me one day and said my name when they were fucking with me. Soon after that, I rode the subway on March 26th after I left church. I got on the Silver Line at LaFont Plaza after I transferred off of the Green Line coming from church in Shaw. Unfortunately, my ride on the Silver Line to Reston took 2 hours because somehow underground between Ballston and East Falls Church, the train turned around when we stopped, I think. But it turned around, I don't know how, maybe there's a loop underground or it's got a big giant turnstile. But we turned around underground between Ballston and East Falls Church, went all the way to Largo, Maryland. A few other people decided to stay on the train with me and just ride it out. When we turned around, we went all the way back, except for the Silver Line goes out to Ashburn, past Reston and through Reston. We went to Vienna instead, which is the Orange Line end of the road. Then we sat there for a while. Then the train went back in towards the city, but after East Falls Church turned around underground, and we did eventually go to Reston. I ended up at the Wheelie Avenue Reston Silver Line stop 2 hours later, at which point the police were waiting there for me, the Metro police, and they took me off the train. I sat on the ground, gave them my ID, and sat there for about 35 minutes. Then they let me go. And then I went to South Lake Shopping Center, where I grew up as a child skateboarding and hanging out with these so-called friends. You know, the kind of people who sell you drugs when you're a child? Except for their drugs are laced with weird shit like PCP. We called it swag. A lot of cannabis was laced back in the day and probably still is for the cheap people who fuck people's lives up. Anyways, people like Greg Corbett, Jeff Vines, Chris Kalinowski, Nathan Turney. These are the types of people that sold these kind of drugs to people as we were children. You don't learn that magically. You learn it from your parents or the friends of your parents. Again, take this seriously. One of the people that used to cheat off me in high school to get good grades was Hallie Dunn. Hallie Dunn is now an officer in the United States Navy. What does that matter? Who could say? His brother Whitney Dunn used to go out and fool around with women during church. And he'd tell me about it. You know, this kind of stuff. Outside during church in the back. And go smoke cigarettes too. And let me give my hands and my props up to a few of my friends that are dead real quick because of drugs. William Cox, Billy the Kid, I love you. Todd Holt, T.O. Double D, I love you. Critter, Christopher Harahan, I love you. Ronnie Subin, aka Ron Leonard, I love you. Many more. Tahani Azat, most recently, I love you. And why? Because people sell you fucked up drugs and you die. A man from Reston that I don't know well, Dave Adsit, recently died. He's been a crackhead since the 80s. He's like 60 years old. He recently overdosed and died. Someone put something in his crack. Oh well, people die every day. My point is this. A lot of these people now work in high government positions or whatever, or for these government contracts that they get all the money for, while we suffer and work hard and get paid nothing and struggle. Families, working families, while they travel the world with their children and teach them to shit upon all of us. Now, right now in Fairfax County, a man named Sean Joyner made a false complaint against me. And in doing so, I'm facing 15 years as a terrorist. Last year, they had me facing 5 to 10 years, which Jennifer Lolly Wickham was so happy to help me out. And so was Sean Joyner happy to help me out. And a few of these other clowns from Reston, Virginia, mind you. Diplomats, alphabet agent families, secret squirrels, they work among us. That's what we used to call each other in the woods. And you see posters around DC right now trying to make it cute. Okay? What did I miss? Oh, Richie Brandenburg, the founder of the Market Concept, which is basically food courts with restaurants. He founded the Arts District here, NOMA. It says work, live, play on their signage. Nah. The last time I was at Richie's house, he let me come out there and stay the night. I think he was trying to scare me. He had a big mace covered in latex. I think he was threatening to kill me, but he didn't. But he's swinging around saying some weird shit to me and looking all crazy. Of course, he's doing a $100 million project right now here in DC. It's called International Square, 2 blocks from where I used to live under tarps. All these people say they love me and why are you doing this and what's wrong? But they don't come out to help a brother when he's starving, frozen in the streets. And I mentioned Elizabeth Duncan. I used to live with her in Tampa, Florida, and actually I got heart for her. And this is for you. I know Charles is the one who cut the heads off those 3 different snakes those 3 different times when I went out to get the trash or something in the morning, take the garbage out, and there was cut off snake heads in the driveway. That's Charles Fox in Tampa, Florida, who owns the hub, trying to intimidate me because I was with his baby mama. Screw you, Charles. I hope you burn. I hope all y'all assholes burn except for you, Elizabeth. I got heart for you. More later. My puzzle, pieces of the puzzle. My name is Nathaniel Shellhays Vizdos. Homeless in DC now. Political. And by the way, some of those family names I mentioned and their friends have diplomatic immunity, and they also tell politicians what to do. Like Bernie Sanders, Richie? Who tells the president what to do? Who tells Tim Kaine what to do? These shadow families do. So those names I mentioned and their family and friends, they do. This is my name right here. My name is Slovak. And I got love. One love.